They want to know who you are voting for. Are you on board, or do I have to run over you in the parking lot? On the line right now is Jason Treu, who is an expert in New York City when it comes to workplace ethics and a business and executive coach. And Jason, what is it? Everybody wants to know, and then they get fighting over it.
They do. They want to know what you support, and then they want to hit you over the head with it if you don't agree with their opinion. Because people have an adversarial mindset when it comes to politics, religion, and that three-letter word, SEX.
Well, and that's why there's things that your parents always say at the Thanksgiving table. These are the topics we're not going to hit on because it always ends up bad. And I see the Bernie Sanders. I keep mentioning Trump, but Bernie Sanders supporters are as spirited, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely, right? Because I think both people bring out the people that are angry about what's going on, about upset what's going on in politics and just in general today, what's happening in the United States. And those people have a very pointed view on things, and other people usually have a different point of view on it, and that doesn't really mix very well, especially if you're talking in the office, and that can really hamper your ability to get career advancement, and people are at-will employees, so what you say in the office can mean whether you get a paycheck in the next 2 weeks or not.
You know, we had the recent story where the tow truck driver would not pick up the person that was stranded out on the highway because they had a Bernie Sanders sticker on their car.
Yes, that can happen.
That's just showing you.
Watch out.
Are we going back to the time when, if you remember back in the 50s, there was the big search for communism and communists and McCarthyism. So people didn't want you to know what they were reading. They didn't want you to know who they were voting for. If they went to a meeting, they kept it quiet. Are we getting back to that time where privacy is really key?
I think it is, and I think what happens is that if you're in the office, if you go out to lunch with people that are your good friends, of course you can discuss what you want. I think it's having a discussion in plain view with people or with people that you don't know their point of view and you don't know them very well. Because people just don't let up on these discussions. That's the other thing, because think about it. If you're a Trump supporter and someone else is a Sanders supporter, you're not going to get them to flip over by having a 5-minute discussion. And to think that you are is naive, and also it's not beneficial for you. So I think you just have to know the time and place to have these discussions. And I think the challenge is people get really heated and spirited on it, and that's just not the place.
Listen, I know the answer to this because I've been fired a few times over the topic, but we have a constitutional right to free speech. How far does that go into the workplace?
It doesn't, because we're an at-will employee. That means you can be fired for really anything that your employer decides. So there is no protected free speech in employment. Yeah. So, I mean, and even if you did do it, you can't get another job then. Right. So the challenge is that you've just got to really understand your environment, and perhaps you're in an environment that fosters that, right? But that's not many people. If you work for a news network, right, that's going to be something that people want you to discuss many times, but it's not when you work for most employers.
You know what I found is that I've done many morning shows, and I've done some rock morning shows where, it's all talk, and it gets a little, it would get a little risque. And it was very interesting to watch the difficulty people had from doing what they could do on the radio program to entering the office environment after you go off the air, because what would fly on the air does not fly at your cubicle.
I completely agree. Yeah. Because, again, I think it's hard for people to be open to other people's point of view when it comes to politics. And I think especially this political environment where it's so decisive, and I think there are so many things on the line, and also we're getting people running for office that are outside of the Beltway. Yeah. And I think that makes a lot of people really get heated in these discussions about, their certain side. And I think especially since we've seen all these Trump supporters and all the things that we've seen them do, whether you're for them or not, I think it causes a lot of challenges.
I have a listener asking the question, and then we'll let you go. On the bumper sticker, they have a sticker in their cubicle and have been told they have to either cover it up or take it down. Can the workplace do that?
They can. I mean, they own, everything inside of there when it comes to that. So I think, again, I just keep it out of there, right? I mean, I don't, I think, yes, I appreciate people's point of view and advocating it, but you just have to know the time and place. Like anything else in life, you just have to understand that. And, you could do it in your off time, or you can talk about it at lunch or other things. You just have to realize that, it's going to cause you more challenges than not, and you just got to let it go.
All right, Jason. Jason Treu, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Christine has news coming up. Birthdays here for May 12th. Thursday, May 12th, going to be an 80-degree day probably today. A beautiful day, probably one of the nicest days of the springtime. Bernard Capto, C-A-P-T-O. What do you think on that one? Capto is in Clay, celebrating today. Kevin Gotie, G-O-T-I-E, in Rome. And Ricky Phelps in Oriskany, all celebrating today. Bernard Capto in Clay will get the cake from the Florentine Pastry Shop on Bleecker Street in Utica. Get a birthday on air by going to our news site at WIBX950.com, or you can send it a postcard, WIBX Birthdays, 9418 River Road, Marcy, 13403. Christine, news next on WIBX.